Good morning, everyone. Welcome to
Yes.
the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Sorry we're a little late this morning. I had a weird computer thing, and it was quite comical. Tommy was like, I'm excited for today. I had a lot of engagement on the Twitters, and we're all excited. And Seth's like, just calm down. It'll be just
Calm
fine.
down.
And then that's when my computer decided. It was like on
It's like,
cue.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta talk smoothly to the computer.
It's all right, computer. Take it
it's
easy.
Just the same old day.
I tell you what.
Same old rainy weather apparently all over the United States and other areas. I think that came through last night, but it feels like a rainy day.
Yeah, it does. Not as bright in the morning. It's just kind of like dreary and not as good.
Yeah, for those who have never done a live podcast before, it can get stressful, especially when you have like, hey, we have a great topic. It's going to be a lot of fun. You're excited, and then you see someone just disappear, and that person also happens to be the one who's producing it.
Well,
you can add your anxiety levels slightly.
Just gotta roll with it. I'm just trying to make sure you're growing a little bit, Tommy. Just,
Yeah, you gotta work on that calmness, the patience.
Just
roll with the punches.
Take some deep breaths. 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. What the heck is bothering me?
In with what? I've never heard that one. In with
I thought that was from like a movie or something. Yeah, in with the good. Yeah, good. Out with the bad. Yeah, another one.
Just don't do the Seinfeld Serenity Now. That ends badly at some point.
Yes. Well,
if there's one gene my father did not pass on to me, it was patience.
Oh,
so
no, that was inherited.
Might be learned behavior, however. Let's not get into that, guys. All right, moving on.
All right,
whole different topic.
Transition. Excellent.
Oh.
Well, good morning, everyone. Anyone have any kind of openers or things that are going on today? The Wednesday wasn't a big announcement. The Microsoft Business Applications event, kind of kicked off, happened there. So, well, I'll just say it was a good event. I think there was some interesting things that were said, but I guess being as MVPs, we're kind of in the know, or we're very closely tied to what's going on. Wasn't any really major surprises, I don't think. I do feel like the message of data and the importance of working on data together was very well conveyed through the meeting, and I felt like there's, to me, it felt like Power BI is great, but Power BI is better when there's a lot of good data behind it to support it, right? Breaking down data silos, how do you bring everything to the cloud? What does that look like? So I felt like that message was very loud and clear to me. One of the demos, I don't know, did you guys watch the full thing, or did you guys just hear about it after the fact? Kind of watched it.
A lot of the supply chain stuff.
There was a demo around a store that I found was very fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
So it was basically using like machine learning, and it's a real retail situation. I thought it was very interesting. They had the ability for companies to have, you already have cameras in your stores or a retail location. You can pipe those cameras directly into this cloud environment, essentially. And it looked like, and again, I can't confirm it or deny it yet, just kind of based on the demo pieces, but it looked like you could set up cameras again around the store where there are important areas for people to congregate or not. You could set up boundaries on the floor, and if people stood there too long or weren't making a decision quick enough, you could real-time power automate a message to someone's phone and say, hey, someone's over by the wine rack. They have been standing there longer than normal. It's maybe an opportunity for a sale. Someone should go over and check them. So I think idealistically it looks really good, but I feel, my initial thought was, wow, they're going to use this to make sure people don't steal stuff.
Well, I mean,
when somebody steals, if true, call the police.
It's exactly right. But I thought it was a really interesting demo. I lean on this problem. Well, so taking this idea a bit back, right? Thinking Microsoft goes after these hard problems. I feel like, from machine learning or document interpretation, there's a whole bunch of really interesting AI, ML kind of projects that Microsoft has been working on. They have been pretty much attacking the biggest problems that you have in machine learning and trying to make like a out-of-the-box solution that you can go use or an API you can go hit, which I find very fascinating. So, I don't know, just thoughts on that when I was watching that.
That is a good idea. Yeah, but it is a good point, though. The underlying theme with Power Apps, with automate and Power BI is that collaboration kind of thing where
That's a
it's like
really good point.
yeah.
Yes, I'd
So
agree with that
that's
too.
definitely hit home because from the just the Power Platform or for Power BI especially, it was maybe 10 minutes. There wasn't anything like, wow, I didn't know that it was already in the blog.
Yes.
But you're kind of right. That kind of catch all was,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you can do this with other people and you can do it in more places. It
And
wasn't so much about
yep.
the product; it was about the
The,
platform and where the branches reach.
Problems you can solve with these technical tools.
right. I
Right.
mean, I'll be 100% honest. All the technical tools that Microsoft put out have helped my career. It's single handedly allowed me to have a consulting business where I can be anywhere in the world in a couple seconds. I mean, I
Yeah.
can beam into calls all across the U.S. I'm it's like I'm there kind of thing. So, it's pretty cool.
In my head, I kind of equate the minutes they spend on a product to the amount of dollars they get for it. And I wonder if that's true because they spent 45 minutes, probably 80% of the time, really just on dynamics.
Yeah, but that's all right. I'll be honest here for just a moment.
Uh
Um,
oh.
as soon as Dynamics, I mean, it was Power BI conferences were like about Excel and data initially. The first two, the Data Insight Summits, were very centric on these new products that they were, or the Power BI new product they were building. I loved those. I thought those were great. As soon as Dynamics got thrown into the mix here of all this stuff, yes, I understand that it's very important for companies to use it. Microsoft's making a lot of advancements there. It's just not my area as much. Like
No.
I'm not as thrilled and loving the dynamics piece of all this. I'm like I want more focus on the Power BI elements, but it's probably not as much of a money maker as dynamics. I think at this
Well,
point.
I think there really are two different specialists, though. Maybe if you just put the Power Platform on its own conference and its own thing, it wouldn't be able to stand on its own. I don't believe that, but they're still merging them for a reason, like where it's kind of like they're partners in every conference or video or. But no one claims to be a Dynamics and Power Platform specialist, or
Yeah,
you don't
I
hear
don't
it.
I
It's like
don't
a better together story though, right?
it is, but at the same time, like I don't disagree, like the merging of these bodies, right? Like these are business users. They,
Yes.
Mm,
CRM and the tie-in to Power Apps and
Yeah.
Power BI and all
Sure.
these things. But the gripe I do have is, well, you're not showing these people the capabilities of Power BI. You're
right.
giving us 80% of CRM, right?
Mm,
So if you're gonna merge these things together, like
Mm.
I think our gripe over the last several years, including this one, is, well, thanks for the hand wave to Power BI, which is like now the leading visualization platform in the world,
right.
Right.
right? Like, and you're not
Tableau
gonna
has his
give
own
it
conference.
dedicated time. So like throw me a freaking bone, like
I mean, well, like Tableau has its own like week conference every year, still,
yeah.
and
Really, they
Mike,
still have their conference every year.
yeah, I and
What
he
what what
well,
what was that?
Tableau, they do like TableauCon or
What is
something.
that?
It's a conference for
Is
Tableau.
that some small visualization tool or
Yeah,
something?
something. It's been out for a while. I
Yeah,
think it's dying.
must be
So
in the mix of all the
shots
low
fired.
hanging thing.
Hey,
Well,
we
Houston, Mike, when we went to Houston,
yeah.
you could tell it's a different type of person who's in each space where we're walking around and
Yeah.
Okay, so
you would,
let's get some
yeah,
context here. Houston was a Dynamics 365 event that had some tracks around Power BI. I mean,
it's called the Power Platform World Tour.
it was a Dynamics World Tour,
Or, yeah,
and it was
no,
like a sprinkle of a little bit of Power
right.
BI there, kind of towards the end.
Wasn't the name though the Power Platform Summit?
Sure, it was Dynamics. I mean, through and through. I mean, that's where all the vendors that were there on the vendor floor were Dynamics people.
Yeah.
So, I, to your point though, Tommy, I agree with you. We went to the conference; it was really good. Met some really cool people there, but it was again, it was heavily around the Dynamics piece, and it's kind of more of like, look, we have Dynamics, and we bolt on Power Apps, Power Automate,
Right.
Power BI, and I just felt like that's not every person's story, and I think
Right.
that's probably the right story that Microsoft wants to be displaying. But I don't know. I just feel
Yeah.
like
Whatever.
it is what it is. Marketing will
It's
do
a
what
good
marketing does.
hey, right. It's I mean, it's the business to IT. The challenge, right, with Power BI is what we talk about all the time. Where do you stick it in a conference? Because it can be a very business centric tool,
Correct.
Mhm.
right? We want it to be. We want to lead more users into using it so that, but like, then let's flourish with the 101 sessions, man, right? Like let's tell that story and show all these business users how you can integrate. And then it also needs to be part of the technical conferences because it's
Yeah.
enterprise tooling.
Yep.
It's
Mhm.
the other side of that,
Yes.
right?
But this is
Um,
you bring up a really good point because this is exactly why I like the tool so much. It's
right.
very, 5 minutes to wow. I've got some stuff that I can do visuals with very quickly, and then it's also deeply technical on the other hand. And this is one of the, I guess, the main points, Seth, you and I used when we're trying to sell this to people consulting. Right? Look how great this tool is. It starts easy and it gets very complex, but it gives you the ability to kind of build stuff from the business side, add value, hand it over to IT, and let them enterprise it. That's
It
the story.
yeah. It almost feels like you're work at Verizon and you're a Verizon developer and you go to an Apple conference. Yeah, they're intertwined, but you kind of feel a little out of
You're
place.
always with your analogies, Tommy. I'm not sure if
I'm
I fit. I
sorry.
don't fit. I fit this one.
If that okay, fine, fair enough.
But okay,
It's more
I
like
get
the
what you're saying.
Windows phone.
Oh
It's
boy.
more like a Zune and an iTunes.
Oh boy.
All
And we
right.
are
Anyway,
officially
so
off the
there was the
rails.
launch event. Some
We'll
cool
talk.
stuff.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
What
yeah.
else? Anything else?
Contest still going on. 1 week to
Still going
go.
on. One final week in the contest. How do you enter the contest for those
So for
those
those
just
who
joining us?
don't know, and it's still open, so even if you already have done it, you can still continue to. We are right near episode 100, and for our 100th episode, we want to celebrate the community. We want to celebrate how somehow we got to it, and what we were asking for you guys is on Twitter, LinkedIn, any previous episode, any discussion, topic, or just argument that we've had that you really enjoyed, post about it with the hashtag explicit measures. LinkedIn and Twitter are the platforms we'll be monitoring. And for the 100th episode, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of curate all of that, and we're
Mhm.
going to kind of go back to see what we enjoyed. Do we still feel that way? And kind of recap all of that. Why should you do it? One, help us out a little, throw us a bone,
Throw us a
and
bone. What do you
yeah,
like here?
and then but two, win some swag. It's going to be a huge giveaway. But we want to give back to you guys, and we're just
Yeah.
asking
Thank you
for
very
you guys
much.
out. Yeah, yeah.
We appreciate you
So
guys.
yep, and you have until Wednesday, which of the 13th to do so.
13th. Wow, we were it's coming up quick.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well, so let's jump into today's topic today. This is going to be an interesting topic, so I'll be very clear and upfront with this. Like I'm going to be talking about more of this from like a how is this technically possible standpoint, and I think I haven't had a lot of experience directly working this. Today we're going to talk about right back in Power BI. So, um, Tommy, give us kind of the intro of like what is this right back thing, and maybe we can talk about like why would this be relevant to people? Why is this a relevant topic? I guess.
yeah. I think we're going to take a different spin than some people are thinking, because the history of right back in Power BI, we're talking about really the first one was Power Apps, and it was the ability to like, hey, any
Well, define what before you go
yeah,
into
yeah, sure,
yeah,
yeah,
define it first. Like, what does this mean? Like, I have a Power BI report up. Let's just define like what does write back mean in general, just for people who have never
yeah,
heard the term or just starting to get you know
yeah.
acclimating to the idea of what this is.
And it is, in its essence, it's really for the ability rather than to consume, is the actual ability for the user, the consumer, to input or
Mm.
actually push back data coming from the report into another system. It
Yes.
could go into a same table, but it can go to anything. But it's really for that the user's ability to actually push out to another source system within a Power BI report
Hmm.
in its most basic level.
Perfect. So,
So,
so like, I mean, again, the examples that I've seen before doing this would be is I have a table, something like a financial potential report, right?
mhm,
I'm looking at goals or projections, or I have a number that I need to update for the quarter, or something like that. So the idea is there's a table in front of you, and you can then click on one of the numbers in that table,
right.
adjust the number, literally type it in back in, and then that data is then sent from the Power BI report back to a source system,
Hmm.
and then that change is then reflected in the data that you have
Right.
for everyone else, right? So you're basically changing the source information around whatever that
Right.
number would be.
And I think we're having the conversation today because even though it's been available in Power Apps and Alex Powers, I'm not touching I'm not even going to measure your multi-dimensional, right? But we're not going to touch that today, I don't think. So, but kudos. But it's been available in Power Apps for a while. Chuck Sterling,
Yep.
one of the first to demo it, and really a big proponent of using Write Back and using Power Apps
Mhm.
in Power BI reports. But I think we've seen in the last year more and more services and custom visuals enabling having this feature available, and it only seems that there seems to be a little more steam around visuals, companies and products that can do right back in Power BI reports. So
Mhm.
the interest seems to be growing. So from my point of view, as I've seen this kind of go around, it's like, okay, so where does this fit? Or I think we're only going to see more of it. We're only going to see more services and more features available with this. But where does it actually fit for a pro? What do I need to know, as a professional and an author, and how much freedom does that really give? So
Uh,
I've been using Power. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go on.
no, I was just gonna say, this is a place where I somewhat struggle a little bit as to the needs versus. I mean, it's definitely a cool feature. I definitely like the.
Mhm.
So don't get me wrong. I think this is definitely needed. I'm not saying it's something that I wouldn't want to do, but here I'm taking this purely from like a technical standpoint. And again,
Mhm.
maybe my mindset of this is, I'm thinking right back on like nor normal or large data models, right? If I have a very large data model with a lot of information in it, to me, this potentially could cause a lot of challenges. And so, again, maybe this is, Michael's putting his IT hat on. What happens if there's multiple people opening the same report, multiple people trying to write back the same information? How are conflicts resolved? So I guess at the end of the day, something that I've been very comfortable with was everything imported, right? I love import everything into the data model. It's very fast. The model works really really well. Star schema, everything kind of thing, and those are the mindsets that I adopt to. So if we think about there's always a bit of a lag. I feel like between what the visual potentially would show and the data that's coming to the data model from whatever source system. This is where my head kind of goes with some of this stuff. Unless you're using direct query, you could have a table in front of you. That table could come from multiple measures or whatever that looks like. You edit those numbers. The data gets sent back to some sort of database system in the back end, but then you have to refresh the model. What if your model's big and it takes a while for it to refresh, 3, 4, 5 minutes? That's poor experience. Is that really what you want to be doing? So I feel like Power BI is primarily a reporting out, data out only type tool. When we start having write back things, that's where I get a little bit more like, I'm not sure. I understand the use cases there, but I'm not necessarily sold on it. I don't know. Your
Welcome to the dark side, Mark.
thoughts?
We've fully transformed you from a business user to IT.
I guess.
There's no going back.
I would so I think here's how I see it, right? Like let's center the conversation I think around the area that we need to, which is the most applicable areas for right back. I agree
I like that.
100%.
I like that.
Large enterprise models, very limited use cases or none at all, right? I'm not going to let anybody touch my core data
Right.
Mhm.
relate
Yeah.
that's coming out of enterprise systems like with right back.
Correct.
However, are there locations where we're potentially doing, some aggregation based on a config table and business needs to keep that up to date or
Mhm.
something? Well, okay, well, maybe that's a use case. But Mm, not much, right? When we're in the gold standard, we have enterprise model. I'm refreshing those fact tables, like even if it's on incremental refresh periodically, we need to redo the whole thing. If you're writing back into that, like where's that going to get stored? It's not going to be in the model front end. So
Mhm.
I'm going to give you access to a back end system. Likely not, right? So I don't think there are many use cases in big BIIT centric models where you're going to introduce this type of behavior. Now, like switching to the very front business side, if I'm a business unit like finance or something, and I own the data sets on the back end, and maybe IT has helped me structure things so that we have, a table of data in a database, so it's not in an Excel document or something like that, or even if it is, I think those use cases live a little bit stronger from the standpoint that it's okay that the hardcore end users in reporting could tweak some things
Mhm.
because they're the data owners, right? Like
Yes.
if they muck something up through this, they own that change as opposed to two teams kind of going back and forth between conflicting issues of like, why are you updating data like this, like from the report? Why did you change your sales numbers from
Mhm.
200,000 to 180 to have your percent increase and then change it back after the reporting period, right? Like, you're not saying that happens, but
Yep.
you're opening up the capabilities. Now,
Mhm.
like, there are things within there that I believe, like Power Apps, you can capture the user, right? I would definitely add in like history of like who's making modifications to source tables and systems.
That's exactly where I was
But I
going with
think,
this. Yeah, too.
but in large part, I think Write Back has more use cases in the end users owning source information, and if we're going to use this to clean up, related to like writing back into core data sets with core volumes of data. There, I think there's another use case, but I'll save that for a second to hear what Tommy's feedback is as he's
Ramping up here.
heavily sighing.
Oh,
Do you do you disagree with me, Tommy?
to a degree. To a degree. I'll say it first. Yeah, there's no solution here, or there's no good answer for, hey, just provide the data set that you provided in the Power BI model to every user. That sounds great. Of course not. Like, that's idiotic. With that being said, I mean, you're seeing what Microsoft's doing more and more with giving more access to more data to more people through easier platforms. The ability to create a Power App now, I mean, you saw it in the demo. It's like, hey, I mean, a model-driven app looks like a SharePoint list right now, and
Yeah.
that's what they showed in the demo.
Yep.
Because it probably is on the back end. It's no longer this data table or Dataverse table. It's a SharePoint list with nice, pretty colors and conditional formatting. So they're making this more and more accessible to more users. And I think there's a reason why, too, you're seeing more and more companies provide these write back services. I think there's a garnering interest. And that's just kind of the flow where that merge of IT, and I'll say it again, that kind of blending of IT and the business user continue to kind of intertwine,
Hmm.
because we've talked about the trend where I don't have to go to school in computer sciences to work in data anymore. Where 10 years ago, you probably had to. You had to have that education. And with Right Back now, I think there is a trend, and there is absolutely a lot more use cases than I think you guys are considering. um, Obviously, there's the IT side of, like, you made some very good points, Mike. The conflict, like, what if I'm in it and so is Tracy, and we're both editing the
Yeah.
same record, right?
And
What happens?
I liked Seth's point here just a second ago was, what happens when, how are we tracking who's changing what, right?
Yeah,
I mean, some data should be able to be changed and some data maybe shouldn't be able to be changed.
right,
Or, we need to know why the change is happening or something along
right,
those. And so that's where I'm kind of like, well, and then to me, there's another technical part of this. Like, what is the acceptable lag between when the change is made until data models are updated? Do we have to trigger a refresh every time someone changes a data set or refresh a single table? That to me, that fundamentally changes the design of what you're building inside the model, and you might need more controls around how is that model refreshing so
right,
you can get the right data in there. So
right.
to me, there's just other aspects of this that are like, I'm not sure if I quite understand everything that's going on there. And again, some other people are talking about you can actually edit the tabular model directly. I'm looking at some of the documentation from Power On, which is talking about direct edits to the tabular model itself. Which again, I'm like, cool, but what happens when stuff refreshes? How does that stuff populate back to the source systems? Anyways,
Mhm.
that's kind of where my head goes on some of this
Yeah.
stuff.
So let me propose three different scenarios that I think Right Back really are going to play a place in the future of the Power BI, the Power Platform sphere. And again, this is a low report, high impact to me. This is not every report have it. The first one is clean data.
Hmm.
We constantly talk about, hey, the CRM system, or how do we do a data quality report? Well, the problem is people input their data, they don't know where it goes, and then that shows up in a report and it's blank. Well,
Yep.
now you're providing that ability for owners of that data to actually go, hey, that's actually not my record. That's Robert's record.
Hmm.
Okay, I can edit. I can go through and modify that, and I can clean the data in real time because I can actually see what it's affecting.
Yep.
The second is collaboration. So where there are different points, like with finance, where there's different approvals that need to go through, I can see the data itself in the report and go and approve. I can do the communication on certain data sets. And the
Mhm.
third one that I want to mention is additional write back, we'll call, but it's not necessarily on the source system. It's not on the data that you see. And this plays really well into Power Apps where
Yep.
you can drag or include data from a table, but you can actually just push that to a new record, a new table. For the user, it can
A
they don't
new
know where it's going.
a new
So
table.
you can collect data from a Power BI report, and in Power Apps, you have the full functionality of a Power App
Yep.
to either modify a table or add a record
Yep.
to another
I
table.
mean, that to me that acts like more like full write back, right? I mean, so
Right,
Power Apps is touching the real. It's almost like, you've got a server, and the Power Apps is live connecting, or
right.
direct connecting directly to the server, and when that record updates, it puts a pause.
Well,
It actually
yeah,
edits the record, updates it, and then if other persons are adding it or trying to edit that field, it would lock it out, kind of thing.
right.
It's going to
Well,
handle those
yeah.
conflicts for you.
And I think when we say and I do want to mention the outside of the box. So the thing, like when we say write back, we don't necessarily mean to the data set in that Power BI model. It's just writing back to it could write back to SharePoint.
True.
It could write back,
Yep.
but just using data from the report. So those three scenarios to me have a big story, I think, in the future of Power BI reports.
Okay.
There's a number of companies handling this.
Hold on. All right, let's go.
No, it
Oh yeah.
it Tommy, like your points elicited, some thoughts, some additional thoughts
Okay.
that I'll share. Um, one is initially, I think if I'm looking at the swath of how many reports am I going to add right back to, it's not many, right? And it's not going to be
Right.
the broad audiences initially, right? What you
Mhm.
just outlined is, do I create reports with like I would are there use cases where I'm using Power BI for data analysis and potential cleaning of data for analysts, right? Like you're using Power BI more as a tool to clean data versus a reporting tool,
That's where
right?
I'm like,
And
is it?
if it's in like, and that's where I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like, okay, yeah, it's a method,
Yeah.
right? But ultimately, are you're not if I'm giving this to people who I trust, like, yeah, your job is to clean the data, it's verify and clean the data. Like that's analysts, and I'm using Power BI as the mechanism for them to clean data through this visual layer and a Power App to write back to a database because they don't have the technical chops to do that in whatever the source system language is.
Correct.
It's not really a reporting tool, right? Now it's a data cleaning tool.
Well, and so to your point set there, to some degree, I feel like what should be happening to this is the reporting is doing the reporting. And again, I take Alex Powers as kind of saying he's more of a classic approach where he says, reporting is a one-way view only kind of street. That's kind of how he views reporting. I would tend to agree with that. But I do think there's a need for write back on things, but I don't feel like it belongs inside Power BI. This is where I would like to have links or like other information where I could push you to, oh, hey, you're trying to update this record or you want to update these things. You can push the filter context of what you're doing to another part of the application. That would be like, hey, I'm going to drop in on Power Apps. I'm going to go to the table that I need. Here's the records I was filtered down to. Boom. Records are there. I can update those records. So again, I wrote a comment here, you know, do we think about things in the terms of, is it Power BI embedding into a Power App, or is it a Power App embedding into Power BI? And so where I feel like there's good handshaking here, right? For certain use cases, Tommy, like you mentioned, right? If I want to add comments about a report, sure, you can have a Power App embedded into a Power BI report. You can see the report, click on things, you can capture states of data. Those can get stored into the Power App, and then you can write comments there and all that kind of other stuff, and have a live chat essentially inside the Power BI report, which is kind of cool. You're writing data technically to another source. It doesn't have to be the original source. I feel like that's a good use case to some degree. Um, you know, putting a Power App in that has, and Charles Sterling did a good example of this one. I still think it's a pretty relevant example. Have a star feedback. This report is, what's your rating on this report? 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. You click the number of stars, it gets written back to somewhere where you can see people's sentiment about the report over time. I think that's good. But on the other hand, too, I also think here as well, looking at this going, I'm like, well, I don't want to muddy the waters too much between Power BI and the data.
So I used to think of a report as something I would edit on my desktop, and apparently that's going away. So if I'm giving up desktop applications, I think there's only this
Oh boy,
unique way. Well,
concessions are maybe being made right here, right now.
honestly though,
Tommy's
like
throwing down ultimatums. Here we go. If I'm
well,
giving up the desktop, you
then
better.
you have to give up consumer access. Yeah, like something I don't know. Yeah. But the idea of what a report is has drastically changed the last 10 years.
Hmm.
If you said, what is a report 10 years ago? It's like, well, if you had a lot of money, it's Tableau or SSRS kind of thing. This one spit on kind of thing. And if you want to change, you have to wait till next quarter. And now, again, it's that ability like, well, I can click on things and do this stuff. And I think we're only moving in that direction where we're kind of the muddying the waters, so to speak, of a report. I mean, if I can embed in PowerPoint or open in OneDrive, is it really your idea of what a report is? I'm not saying open the floodgates for consumer, not activism, but ability to edit any data set they want. But that ability to collaborate, that ability to help clean or collaborate, I think we're only finding more and more solutions for that. We have actually just built something that has been pretty transform have opened my eyes, so to speak, to this ability, where I'll kind of give it in a short story. Everything has to be vetted by 3 teams before it can get to finance. And the thing is, it has to
Yep.
it's not coming from clean data sources. It has a lot of the transformation has to be done within the data set. Some things are coming from Excel, unfortunately. Some things are coming from an API. Some things coming from SQL Server. Well, each team has their own page where they can actually modify, say, you know what, actually, this needs to be grouped under this account. Or, you know what, this product is actually this master product. Or this record is a duplicate. So we need to remove, make sure that this is not included in the final view. Those 3 pages live in a report and have write back where either it's updating a table or adding a record to a table with a comment saying exclude this record. And then Power BI will refresh itself with Power Automate. Again, obviously scale matters here, but it will go through the refresh once updates occur and will update the final in a sense that finance would look at. This could not happen in a Power App alone because the transformations, the models that are needed.
Hmm.
And this is transformative. And this is, like I said, open 3 different apps for 3 different teams that all serve a very direct function that's cleaning the data in a sense in real time. That from the logic point of view for the business and from the way it flows into the data model is incredible. And I can't see this not being more widely used. We talk about all the time, why aren't people inputting things the right way? How do we make sure people are using the report? Well, this is the way. And again, we're not just dealing with a SSRS report with this is we're dealing with that collaborative feature now. So
So what? So my
This
question.
is the way.
Yeah, I was going to say. You said a
this
word.
is the way.
You said a
This
word.
is the way.
This is the way. Um. So you said some. You said something that kind of tickled my ears, I guess, a little bit. Right. You said something around the idea of like you have some data, it's not clean, and so you're then using this process to clean some of the data. How does won't won't the unclean data just come through again? I mean, are you editing the source system where like I'm thinking
Yeah.
like there's an operational
Yeah.
system
Editing the
here.
source.
You're
No, so
Are you
there's 2
actually,
approaches.
or are you editing? Are you saving the changes to a separate table, and then someone else is taking the action of here's the edits that have come through. I need to go update the source so that way when I reload it again, it's not a problem.
So there's from a technical point of view, there's 2 solutions we apply right now. One is you actually edit a column in that source where they can say they click on the record saying, I don't think this should be included. And there's basically they say in Power Apps they just say exclude. All it does is add a flag,
Yeah,
a
yeah,
check mark to
gotcha.
say
You're not changing
don't
the data. You're
include.
just noting
No,
data information
right.
about the data. Yeah,
Right.
okay,
And so I think a lot of cases are not necessarily like, hey, rename this, so to speak. But the other part too is like
okay,
I said, with all this bad data, we need to group all these accounts under the same ID, but they all come in with the names. So the user has the ability to say, hey, company ABC, that's actually, under this,
Rob's accounts, right? Not
right,
mine.
Rob's account.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has the wrong name here, but I know it should be under this account. So that is actually just adding a record to a row, saying it's just like and that's one of our bridge tables. So
Interesting.
in that ability where you have all these, again, you don't necessarily have to write back exactly to that source, where I still think there's a
Sure.
use case,
Yep.
but there's those alternative approaches where you can have those, in a sense, fixer tables
Okay.
that,
So this
yeah,
is this is a very specific use case that
yeah,
doesn't typically, I think, fall into our terms of like what a report is when we talk about defining questions and answers, giving
sure.
insights, etc.
Agreed.
Like you're using Power BI as a data cleaning analysis mechanism to show data to end users so that they can clean it,
But I'm also like,
to get clean
Well,
reports.
this is
Because you
only
just
yes.
said
yeah.
there's like 3 pages. Each team has their own page. They
hmm
look at, I mean, in its simplest form, is it a report because you're,
So
showing
honestly,
data
in
to
the
them?
simplest,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, we have this
but
report's
it's
being used,
specific to those users that are going to cleanse and clean
right?
Yes.
the data,
Those pages
so
are
you can then extend that model and have accurate reporting for other
right.
things, right?
Yeah, and again, using
Okay.
Power Apps, you can have that role level. You can have the security. If this user is trying to update this app, they can't.
So
So no
So
one can go in.
I
the one,
like so I like that part. That part I
Yeah.
like.
but how in the spectrum of how many reports you're generating,
hmm
This is like a one-off.
what is it, 5%,
Less.
2%,
This is the first one you've done.
Yeah.
1%,
So I think no.
0.5%?
No, what I'm saying is I would be willing to put money down that people listening here can think of a solution where this is high impact. I already said this is not 40% of your reports or half your reports are going to have this feature,
Sure.
but
Now,
Understand.
I
well,
can make a
well,
case for 15%,
I
one
could
out
make
of
a case
10.
for a lot larger than that, actually, Tony,
Yeah. Okay.
but not in this
Not in this
scenario,
circumstance, but
Yeah.
yeah,
right? The one that
this
intrigues me
was a
the most,
specific. Yeah.
and by the way, I knew this rang a bell with me, and I had to go digging. uh, SQL Jason. So Jason
Mm,
Thomas was an MVP. I think he works at Microsoft now,
Yep.
or like haven't seen him on the social channels. So if people want to ping him and say, "Hey, Jason, we
Come
were talking
back.
about you," still has one of the best blogs about this right when it came out, like in
mm,
2018, which is how do you like using this for direct comments that generate emails, right? So
Yep.
it's like, hey, like if people are doing, like to your point, right? We just talked about in a previous episode where you're using comments in the service to identify like
right.
read into and fix things or generate or build new whatever. Like, is there a place for some, a page in a report where it's like provide direct feedback to whatever, or have something on a table that's like, why did this number like blow up? Or
hmm
as I'm looking at this report, it would be great if we use this whatever and have like a direct feedback
Yeah.
comments section or something that like allows an end user to generate a ticket or whatever the case may be, where there's an action that comes out of this. Then yeah, I think like to me, write back to a system or writing to a system makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the first, so like comments or kickoff action, I think would be something that I could see, being very useful in reports that would require or allow an end user to digest information. And I have a small feature that allows me to like take an action, because I think one of the initial not blogs, presentations was around that scenario where it was almost maybe construction or order driven or something, where somebody was looking at a report that was generating um, data. Maybe it was airline, right? Maintenance, where
hmm
they knew an airplane was coming in,
Yeah. And it
and
needed
there was
the
right
maintenance thing
back
was.
to
Yep.
there was a right back to a system where it's like, oh,
Scheduling
I see
things.
that this is happening and this plane is overdue. We're going to capture that here, generate a work order for that plane, and you
Yeah.
could do that directly out of a
hmm
report.
Yeah.
So I think that's writing to a system, same right back, same whatever. But to me, that makes a lot more sense to take an action on a report versus like go modify something that is
Right.
generating data for the report.
And it's a real quick point, Mike, before you go.
Go ahead.
My case, while very specific, is one of the underlying themes that you guys said is and something we've hammered on is who owns the data. That ability that we allowed, again, however you want to frame it,
hmm
is making sure that team owns it. Like you have to check this table, operations team to make sure that the accounts are matched up, because we don't know ABC's what that's supposed to be matched to. You do. And that is the underlying theme that I wanted to talk about. Like, it allows that ownership side of it for certain parts of, all the different things that are coming into any given report. And then, yeah, the other part is that collaboration. So
I do like another point you made though, right? Where if you are going to add access to a system and have users modify data, that it not be on the core data, right? That it be on a
right.
separate column where it's like, to your point, exclude. And then now when I refresh the report, whether that's real time
Right.
or, in the next refresh, you're not going to see that anymore because you
Yeah.
have an exclude column.
Right.
Or maybe the value they insert is this is what the value should be, and their overwrite is actually a separate column that can
That's
be
exactly what we
analyzed
do
and
too.
say,
Yes.
hey, Tommy modified his sales numbers, right? So the report's going to respect that through a coalesce, right? We're going to take what the end user is saying, but we're also going to kick it into review to validate whether or not we should update the core value as opposed to just let that happen in a write back.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
I'll do a
Initially, when I
select.
hear write back,
I'll do
I'm
a
like,
select star
I'm like,
where and then coalesce. And,
no.
I'll do a case when, add a whole bunch of SQL commands. And I love how you just add SQL language right in your normal sentence. I love it.
Mike, please take the floor because there's a few comments here.
I think I agree with, I agree with the use case here. Here's my burn on this whole thing. My burn is this is another license. So
Yeah.
So couple things, right? Comments on things. I think people had a very early use case around writing back and being able to have real-time commenting on reports. I think it's great, but that's now part of the PowerBI.com experience. So I don't have to pay a dime extra for anything else. That comes with Power BI and Teams, and like you're getting more of that experience already. Great. You don't need it anymore. And then on the other hand, too, like I think the commenting experience for Power BI is richer than what we're getting with Power Apps because I can snap bookmarks, keep those bookmarks, comment about what's happening at that time. So maybe that's one thing. I understand. I definitely do like the use case of being able to write data back or to a separate table, like you were saying, Seth. I thought that's really good. I think this is a solid use case. I still feel like in my core, like I'm having some hesitation to this. It's like, this is just not, like, it feels like a Band-Aid. It feels like a hack around what we want to be doing, which I feel like is the report is pure reporting. And then from that pure reporting, we're able to kick people over to something else. Call it an app, call it a Power App. I don't really care what you call it, but there is a proper place to go clean data, right? You have to have a way of editing that information. So maybe, the circumventing time or the circle time between I find a problem and I need to update a record or add metadata to a record that says this is not correct, right? So, when you have this, everything I'm hearing though feels like a very specific use case, and you have to, like, if Tommy, to your point, right? If you're solving a very specific problem, it is I have a record, it's categorized incorrectly. Therefore, I'm going to make up not make up data. I'm going to allow other data to be created in a separate table that enables me to fix it, right? Reallocate things. But to do that, to make it work, you actually now have to go back to the data model and add, not just the normal column that you had previously. You have to take the normal column and add to it something else, something additional that's there as well. So you're doing it like two parts. You're enhancing the data model and providing the ability for people to edit data. So everything that you've done with this edited data is potentially in adding complexity to everything downstream.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be more steps, but I disagree wholeheartedly that my case is individual. Like, yes, the actual project we're doing probably only works in the project that we're doing, but
you're solving specific problems, right? I mean,
yeah,
if you're gonna just spitball with me here for a minute.
sure.
If I had 15 columns of data and all of them had to be recategorized some way, one way or the other, isn't that? I mean, you're now for every single column, you're having to add more information to the model to be able to, kind of real time update that or get that information, like transform that into the right thing. Am I missing something here or what?
No, I think you're adding a little more complexity than is needed depending on how
Of
you
course
do
I
it.
am.
Like,
This is typical for me.
well, so and for me, honestly, when I started dabbling, it was very complex. I'm like, I had the same misgivings where I'm like, this is too much effort for what it would result
Yeah,
in.
the lemon's not worth
And
the
then
squeeze at that point.
right.
Yes.
But then I really started testing things out and seeing actually what I could do with it, and actually created something just for myself on a hidden page.
Sure.
And then I saw what I could, like, once I actually did the implementation, that it literally was like open my eyes, like open the doors, and then you could kind of almost see the vision and the roadmap.
Okay.
And it's yes, you are adding steps, of course,
Yeah.
but the amount of steps and the complexity, I mean, obviously
Not as bad as I
it
as I
depends, not as bad. And then the
Okay.
other part that I really want to push back on, that yes, my case is specific, but I mean, find me a company that doesn't have someone who needs to update a record or change the category or make sure that, this is in the right region or any of those circumstances, and someone should own that, right? That's not BI. Please find me any company. I can guarantee you Apple has some device that should be categorized different. They're probably pretty good, but that
That's fair.
situation
Sure.
where it's like, hey, marketing team, you need to own your campaigns, and if you're not categorizing them right or whatever that is, or you need to push this and improve it, all that stuff. Again, we can't think of reports anymore the same way we think of the way we did 10 years ago, where it's only that consumer view, because we're seeing that evolution in too many cases. And also, like I said, this is truly part of that evolution that I think Microsoft's pushing too. Like, they're like, how can we integrate Power BI into all of our products? I think they're thinking the same way. Like, how can we incorporate our products into Power BI too? I think that conversation is being had more and more.
So
It,
this is where
it,
oh, go ahead.
yeah, but
Oh,
why isn't this a Power App with a visual of Power BI in it?
That's where I'm going with this. I feel like that's where I feel like a lot of this stuff, this write back thing becomes
If
a
if
thing.
you're what you're defining for me, Tommy, is you're using Power BI as the interface, and
mm-hmm.
I would say, like, that doesn't make sense. If there's a view of data that has to be aggregated in some way to allow an end user to understand like what snafus in data they have, rather than just like a flat export from something, like, to me you're describing an application for cleansing data. So to me, like, I have to have Power Apps and automate,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Sure.
I'm already licensing for that. But doesn't it belong more in there where I would have more gadgets, widgets? I could, like, a different way, like a better mechanisms within Power Apps to update data, because you're kind of restricted with the Power App visual in Power BI to only that mobile view, whereas in Power
No,
Apps you'd have more real estate ability to, like, add in a whole bunch of things that they could modify and
you can
update.
change the size. You're not limited in any way with the Power App.
Okay.
So,
But
and you
but
any features you can
again, the
do. Yeah,
question is like, what you're describing to me is building an application process to clean data. And I would argue, like, that's probably where some of the hesitation of, like,
sure.
that's not really a report.
So no, and listen, I agree, but the difference, and this is the primary difference, is if you're already dealing with let's say you're just dealing with one table that you need to clean, no transformations in Power BI, not part of data model relationships where you're trying to output that number, just a view in SQL. Yeah, don't use Power BI for that. But we're talking about situations where the transformations and everything's happening within the data set itself. And that's where this plays. If you're dealing just with one table, do not use Power BI to do this. Use a Power App, because you have one table that you're transforming or making the modifications. But if you have a complex report, or if you have a data set that's really doing your true numbers, so to speak, this is where it plays. And again, this is that situation just for cleaning data. We're not talking about that other collaboration side. Chuck showed it ways you can check out a product. Could you do it in Power Apps? Yes. I, I think that's the point I want to make. A lot of things, of course, you could just have a Power App for. It's not like you could never do this without Power BI. It's impossible. No. With that being said, you have one instance where a view. It's very different to have a form in Power Apps with one record, where in Power BI you can view, like, easily what are the discrepancies, and you have that one place to do it, and
Is that
that
because
changes the game.
Is that because the data in the Power App gets modified and filtered as you're interacting with it
Yeah,
in Power BI and
I
not in
can
Power Apps? Okay.
right because in the Power
So
BI visual,
it's a better analysis tool
right,
in that experience as opposed to Power Apps.
huge where I
Okay.
can actually look. I
I
can
mean, that
say,
makes sense.
yeah,
That makes
yeah,
sense. That makes
and I
sense.
can click on a
It's just
record.
it's just like this conversation is almost like right back, build analysis processes in Power BI, right?
That'll be fun.
I mean, because like
Yeah,
this is what I'm not saying your excitement
yeah,
is in any way, shape, or form diminished, but
no,
it's a small use case versus like where else could we use in write back? Where I would say like comments or taking action to some system and writing back
right,
would be something I would actually more prevalently put
right,
in a report if I
Yes,
worked in an industry where I needed to do that. Like I could
correct.
absolutely see
right,
Remove
take
the friction.
action,
Yeah,
fly down, right?
yeah,
Like
yes. Take
yeah, removing the friction from
yes,
uh, insight to action
right,
is where I get excited about like potential write back
and
possibilities
yeah,
versus data cleansing.
but I think that's to me it's just as prevalent or
prevalent.
there's just as a you're prevalent, thank you.
Yeah.
Just as prevalent in
Hmm.
terms of the situations, especially for all the different unique situations in a company, but also the features and the ability to do so are just as accessible. So you
I
want to do
do
the
agree with
comments
the
and the put,
accessibility in Mike's
yeah,
comment before, where it's like it's probably not used as much because it requires another license. It requires
Yep.
another
hmm
like full big process,
Yep.
Power Apps and automate and all that. And like
But if you're all
Tommy,
if you're if you're
it's
already drinking
also a
that
yeah,
Kool
big
Aid, then
setup,
it's okay. Yeah.
right?
right, yeah, and
Where
if you, yeah,
whereas I could see building a standard audit like write back process for comments or actions, because that would be something that I could use in multiple
and
reports as opposed to custom building a write back process, because that's what you're doing. You're custom building an app that lives
right,
alongside this report process to tie into the very specific columns and updates that these people can update. That's a lot of work. It
yeah.
had to have been a lot of work, even in your use case.
Yeah, I mean, initially also learning it too, but let's not forget like even Power Automate and there's like 4 or 5 custom visuals now. There's that ability. I'll make the argument that just if Power BI is going to move from desktop to cloud and you can do the full editing, I'll make the same case that there's going to be more and more ability and feature sets and samples and options of that write back ability in a report itself. I think they're both
I would
moving in that direction.
so as to I would so I 100% agree with you in this direction, Tommy. The more
Mhm.
you go cloud, the easier it is to integrate various tools together,
Right.
I think. And the reason I'm saying that is because the better experience I think for embedding a Power App into a
Mhm.
Power BI report is in the service.
Right.
When you add the visual
And you're
there,
right.
you can do it today in desktop, but it's kind of like again, it
Yeah.
doesn't feel
You
quite
don't get to
as
see the live
fluid.
data.
Yeah, it doesn't seem
Yeah.
as fluid as if you're doing it in the service. So that I totally agree with. Um, and then so one of the things I guess where I think I would probably change my design or if I'm looking at this kind of solution, we have this need, right? We have a need to go, whether it's a SharePoint list, subset of data, I'm just cleaning and creating and grooming that
Mhm.
data. I feel like where I lean to, and I put a link here in the chat window, was around um, the ability to add a link to a Power App that has a pre-filtered window in the Power App. I feel like what I would
Mhm.
like to be able to, so Tommy, I think I understand what you're saying, right?
And we do, yeah.
We look at data, there's data that's there, right? I can click on things, I can click different categories and say, oh, this doesn't look right. And I feel like the Power BI report is good for getting down to the point of, okay, I understand what I need to do, what needs to change next, right? So when I
Right.
get to that moment of like, okay, what do I need to change? I think where I'm debating here is I don't think I love the fact that we would make the change all in Power BI because I feel like that's I want to keep that pure for reporting and outputting things. However, though, I do want to have like predefined links or predefined something else's. I mean, this could be Power Apps, but if with this concept, you could technically do this for any kind of system, right? You could go to your ERP system and you go right to the product page and highlight, if your application is smart enough, you could potentially reformulate a URL string that would take you right there. And so I feel like that to me is a better
Yeah.
solution. And then the only other hang up that I have with this is it's the speed and the time to refresh the data set. So I feel like, and again, maybe this is coming in the future, I don't know, but it'd be really awesome if Power BI could incrementally refresh and auto detect changes potentially to sources. So there is an API today that allows you to refresh a single table. And so if you and maybe I'm thinking more about like a push data set, right? There's another process outside of I don't deal a lot with push data sets in Power BI, but there is this capability of as data happens, you can just push the data into the model, which you're now pushing single rows of information or net new data. Again, this is another whole ball of wax because you need a whole other process external to say, hey, I'm monitoring what's happening and I'm going to then, uh, you know, on demand push in the information that I need. That's another interesting way because now I can still have the best of both worlds. I can stay in import mode. I can have the data loaded to the model. I can push records into it as needed, and potentially that updates or adjusts things that we have existing. So maybe that's what I'm thinking here, but I feel like we're going to come back to this conversation in, episode 150 and we'll be like, it's been solved. Like we've got this great solution. Like I feel like we're on the cusp of people are going to continue asking for this. It's going to get better.
Yeah.
And I just feel like right now the way it looks to me, it's kind of like a bolt on to me.
Yeah, I think 150 is also going to be the one. Like, remember Power BI Desktop? That's going to be one of our titles too in the future too. But oh man, I lost my train of thought. Seth, go ahead.
Sorry, I was talking too much.
It is the way.
This is the way. So
This is the way. Go ahead. Final thought, Tommy.
So my final thought is, I don't think this is not something you teach like in your basic training. Like, here's a bar chart in Power BI and here's a Power App. Like, this is not part of your basic training. It is still custom. This is not a general use case. That being
I
said,
agree with that.
for anyone listening, I highly encourage you to overcome the complexity of learning the Power App feature if you have the licensing to do so. That in itself, once you can understand how that works and begin to tinker with that, can open up a lot of scenarios for you or a lot of solutions. And that's exactly my own personal story where like I just need to figure how this works. And once I did, 10 things came to me of like where this could be applied.
Yep.
And then with the other visuals, I do want to mention at least that there are other products out there that have this ability.
Yes.
I really just see this coming more and more to the front. There's some really amazing tools out there and features that have put a lot of time into this write back ability.
Correct.
Obviously,
Do those real quick, sorry. Do those
yeah,
visuals write back to the model, or do they write back to the source system?
you have to connect to a source, so not the
Yeah.
model. Yeah,
All
so
right,
you have to.
that's
Yeah,
good. That's good.
yeah.
So I think again I can't speak to all the tools because I haven't tried all of the write back tools out there. And this is why I was a little bit hesitant on this topic because like
Right.
in concept I feel like I know what write back is doing. Right, I've got this imported model. I'm making some changes.
Mhm.
Something data's going somewhere, whatever that may be, and at some point you're refreshing information and you're getting those changed records forward. So
Right,
the closed loop makes sense to me, and that's what I could speak to. But where I'm struggling right now is just making sure that there's not a huge latency between what I'm changing and what's adjusting inside the model. I
right.
want it to be more responsive, but I don't know if cubes are
I'm
the right way to do that all the time.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, just in that context, Tommy, have you had a chance to look at like this security around that? Right. Like you just said, I'm going to give a third party access to my source systems.
Mhm. So some of them actually have really good security, where they actually you define the users who would actually be able to edit.
Okay.
Mhm.
Some
Okay.
don't. It's kind of a little more free flowing, but obviously you're also dependent too
Right.
on the
Okay.
source security. Yeah, but like I said, there have been a lot of strides being made. Like, we're not using in production the custom visuals right now. Like, I've played around with them and
hmm
tested, just because of kind of that scenario. But I think you're going to see, like, in the next year, if we have this conversation in April of 2023, I feel like this will be a very different conversation.
Well, let's revisit it, and
I'll put it on the calendar.
maybe this will be the way for everything.
This is the way.
So what I'll say is
Yeah.
Tommy, you were going to make a point around the different companies that were doing this, right? The things that we found. So I found, again, in my Google foo, I was able to find some companies that are doing some of this. So Power On, I know them
Been
personally.
around for a long
They've been around
time.
for a long time,
Yeah.
and they've been doing right back pretty much since the beginning. I feel like those guys were like the first and foremost. So I got to give, a
And
kickback to
extensively in the finance area.
yes,
Like
and their story seems to be around like planning and goals and like projections, kind of like changing the things. Those are the kind of things you're going to be changing, right? So that makes total sense. Another one that I think that's relevant to point out here is InfoRiver. I think InfoRiver is like a really robust. I mean, it's incredible what they're doing with their visuals. So they're another company that I think is out there. So check them out as well. InfoRiver seems to have some good amount of right backing as well. I'm trying to talk about I don't know how to say their name.
Altrix?
No, it's ACTERYS. Actries?
Actries, yeah.
Actries?
They
I don't
do
know.
they have a lot of custom visuals.
They do, and so they've got they have another, and then they have a right back visual as well, and they have a whole service that kind of goes along with writing back to something, and it has like it does modeling stuff too. It seems to have a very robust feature set for right backs. That's another company out there that's kind of cool. And there's a couple companies that have also talked.
ValQ.
Yeah, ValQ is another one
Theirs
that
is robust.
there's another one too. So it seems like there's some companies that are taking on these challenges, and it'll be interesting to see where like they take it and where Microsoft takes it, and how all this will work kind of in the future here. How this is going to be happening and what we'll be updating. Potentially some of these hybrid table things where part of your data model is imported and part of it's direct query for a single table. If you're writing real records into a table and that table is just appending new records to it, maybe a hybrid table would do that as well. I don't know. So we'll see where this goes. We'll look to the future here. I think it'll be kind of an interesting topic. I like the idea of this. I think it's definitely needed. I mean, reporting's junk without good, clean data. Period. I will, bar none, stand behind that.
Yeah.
And so the better we can make this experience between whatever tooling we're using, whether it's all Power BI or it's a mix of Power BI and other things, I think it adds value at the end of the day. I like the idea of it. I really do.
Seth, what about you? Final thoughts? This is the way. Okay.
Hey, like I think there's a use case for it. I think if anything, we did a good job outlining the different particular areas where analytical solutions for data cleansing, new different thought that you're finding a lot of success with. The comments, action out of particular reports, and the fact that there's a lot more visuals that are giving us the capability to take some action out of reporting is never going to be a bad thing.
Yep.
Whether or not it gets as hot as you think it is, we'll see in 6 months.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Could I ask you guys? I know we're near the time, but ask you guys a question, Mike. If instead of someone came to you saying, "I'm a Power BI pro, should I invest time into write back in the ability right now for the next 2 years?"
Next
2 years.
A little far.
Wow.
Okay, fine.
So
now.
Now, I'd say it's a niche thing, right? When you have, it's probably like you're not going to need to know it. I mean, maybe play around with it so you know how to do it. But again, in every case that I'm seeing these things, there's usually some kind of cost that goes along with write back. I feel like you're getting a custom visual, you're putting a custom system in place. There's some additional cost that goes with it. So again, as the it depends consulting answer, I would say, yeah, anything's possible. But what I would say is the need going to justify the additional cost and or development cycles to make it worth your time? And I would say rather than that is what can we do in an easy way to like link back to, like, here's a report. We'll let you discover where the data needs to change with the report, but we're going to try and link you back to where the source system can actually do that. And I think I would spend more time doing that because I'd rather have cleaner data going in initially, and then we figure out how to hodgepodge our way into like, okay, we updated the record. Now what? How do we refresh the model so it's fresh again? So that's kind of where I'm taking things. What about you, Seth?
Depends on the org. Like if your challenges are more front end and you don't have people that are going to be, you don't have subject matter expertise to fix systems, or this is the best way to implement a process to clean data, then by all means, it's fantastic, right? Like there's a very front facing, Tommy, to your point, methods in which we can automate systems to do cleansing activities, and the visualization layer of that and how we aggregate data through Power BI just enlightens that process, then fantastic. It's a big win.
Yeah, I agree.
In organizations that are more enterprise ready or would solve these things in bigger and different ways, I think there's a lot of other tooling out there that probably is quicker, but it requires teams and people to do that. So I think it's probably a good use case. And look forward to future conversations around it to see whether or not we pull up some new ones as the visuals and additional things, capabilities, and features within Power BI allow us to do more. So it's fun.
Agree to that. Cool. Well, with that, you've burned a perfectly good hour. We've been, rolling around this idea of right back. I hope you found some value from there. There's a lot of links. I try to put them in the chat window as fast as I could find them. So there's some good links in the chat window. So scroll through there. You'll find some of those. Maybe we can get Tommy to add a couple links to the description on the podcast if you're looking for other information about what right back is and what other tools you can use to do right back. Hope we framed that out well for you. And with that, we have the podcast on other platforms. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
So you can find the podcast anywhere they are available, Apple and Spotify. If you do subscribe, which we ask you to, please try to leave a 5-star rating. It really, really helps us out. Or join the conversation live, or how about join the conversation live, 7:30 a.m. Central on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Follow Power BI Tips on YouTube and LinkedIn. And don't forget about the contest, #explicit measures. Write your favorite topic argument that we've had over the last year, 98 episodes.
Sure, and if right back's your favorite, go ahead and write that one out.
I don't think it's
awesome. Well, thank you very much. We'll see you all next week.